Ukraine is tightening up the defense of its border with Belarus over fears that Russia may be preparing a fresh attack, a government official has said. Deputy Interior Minister Yevhen Yenin told that Ukraine would be bolstering the Belarusian border with armed forces and ammunition. The news came as Vladimir Putin traveled to Minsk to meet Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Belarus shares a border with Russia as well as Ukraine. The Russian president later ordered the strengthening of Russia's borders and of social control within Russia. He said the security services should quickly thwart any attempt to violate Russia's borders, combat risks coming from abroad, and identify traitors and saboteurs. He also said the special services should ensure the safety of people living in the parts of Ukraine that Moscow claims as its own. In some of these areas, most notably Kherson, Russia recently suffered significant military reverses. The Thai Navy says 31 sailors are missing after a warship carrying more than 100 crew capsized and sank during a storm in the Gulf of Thailand. HTMS Sukhothai sank after water flooded its power controls on Sunday night. Images shared by the Navy showed some crew who survived in a life raft. On Monday, authorities said they had rescued 75 sailors, but 31 were still missing in rough seas. Search crews worked through the night to find survivors, with the operation continuing on Monday with Air Force assistance. The Navy also announced an investigation into the cause of the disaster. This has almost never happened in our force's history, especially to a ship that is still in active use. A heart surgeon says he probably saved the life of a baby by carrying out a world-first operation using stem cells from placentas. Professor Massimo Caputo from the Bristol Heart Institute used pioneering stem cell scaffolding to correct baby Finley's heart defect. He hopes to develop the technology so children born with congenital cardiac disease won't need as many operations. Finley, now 2, is now a happy growing little boy. But he was born with the main arteries in his heart the wrong way round and at just 4 days old had his first open heart surgery at Bristol Royal Hospital for Children. Unfortunately, the surgery didn't solve the problem and his heart function deteriorated significantly, with the left side of the heart suffering from a severe lack of blood flow. His mother, Melissa, from Corsham, in Wiltshire, said, "We were prepared from the start that the odds of him surviving were not good. The American Space Agency's Mars rover Perseverance will this week begin dropping samples of rock onto the surface of the red planet. The materials have been packaged in small titanium tubes with the expectation they can be picked up by a future mission and brought home. It's a major milestone in the quest to find out whether there is life on Mars. It's thought only by studying rock and soil samples in Earth laboratories can the matter be resolved. Perseverance will place 10 cylinders on the ground at its exploration site in Jezero Crater. They contain a mix of volcanic and sedimentary rocks that the robot has drilled over the past 15 months. Former Hollywood film mogul Harvey Weinstein has been found guilty by a Los Angeles jury of raping a woman. The 2-month trial heard how Weinstein used his influence to lure women into private meetings before attacking them. The 70-year-old Oscar winner is facing up to 24 years in prison when he is sentenced. He is already serving 23 years in jail after he was convicted of rape and sexual assault at his first trial in New York 2 years ago. Weinstein was found guilty on Monday of rape and 2 sexual assault charges involving an accuser known as Jane Doe 1, to protect her anonymity. The jury could not reach verdicts on allegations by Jennifer Siebel Newsom, the wife of California Governor Gavin Newsom, and a woman known as Jane Doe 2. A mistrial was declared on those counts. The new look of banknotes featuring the image of King Charles has been unveiled by the Bank of England. The portrait will be the only change to existing designs of £5, £10, £20 and £50 notes and will start to enter circulation from mid-2024. New notes will feature the King's portrait on the front and in the see-through security window. Existing notes will still be accepted in shops after the new notes begin to circulate. Queen Elizabeth was the first and only monarch to appear on circulating Bank of England banknotes, starting in 1960. Notes issued by Scottish and Northern Irish banks do not depict the monarch. It is rare for artists to want to talk about their love life in interviews. But Emily St. John Mandel, the best-selling author of Station 11, The Glass Hotel and this year's The Sea of Tranquility, is insisting on it. Over the weekend, Ms. Mandel put a call out on social media asking for help in getting her marital status updated on her Wikipedia page. The online, user-edited encyclopedia said she was married, but in fact, she is not. Her divorce from her husband was finalized in November. But when the Canadian author tried to amend the page, she found herself in a bit of a Kafkaesque situation. It turns out, you're not actually the expert on your own life as far as Wikipedia is concerned. You do need a secondary source. Deepening restrictions on ivory trafficking have led to an increase of the trade in hippopotamus teeth. Wildlife campaigners are warning, with potentially serious effects for a species already listed as vulnerable to extinction. When the UK last June announced a near-total ban on the trade in elephant ivory, an animal welfare charity studied what happened in 3 widely used online marketplaces. We found the increase in hippo ivory trade in the UK within a month after the near-total ban of elephant ivory was introduced, says Frankie Osek, lead author of a report released by Born Free in September. This was deeply concerning evidence of increased demand for ivory from hippos, whose numbers in the wild are under threat, the report said. Researchers say this pattern was clear as far back as 1989, when a worldwide ban on trade in ivory was first agreed, and has only intensified as governments have brought in new measures to tighten the ban. When war broke out, millions of Ukrainians had to make a life-changing decision to flee their country, with many hoping to return as soon as possible. But for some disabled refugees, this displacement has offered new opportunities, and they now face a dilemma over whether to ever go home. The Kyrichenko family fled Kyiv as missiles rained down. In the space of an hour, the parents had packed up their car with 3 children, a dog and 2 guinea pigs. Without time to plan a destination, instinct took over and their safety was all that mattered. 9 months later, they are just some of the 1.4 meters refugees living in small apartments, rooms and shelters across Poland. This means that their eldest son Roman, who has cerebral palsy and learning disabilities, has been given the chance to go to school for the first time. He is 20 years old. Svilen Rangelov sports an impressive beard. It's 8 years worth of growth, he says. The beard dates back to when he and his younger brother, an aerospace engineer by training, formed Dronamics as Europe's answer to the emerging market for cargo drones. He agreed with his brother Konstantin that they would only shave their beards after the first flight of the drone they've been building in their native Bulgaria. At the time he established Dronamics, big tech giants like Amazon were experimenting with drone deliveries to domestic addresses. But Mr. Rangelov never believed in the concept of personal goods delivered by the drone. The practical difficulties of flying a drone right up to someone's front door were obvious to Mr. Rangelov. We couldn't buy into the concept of small drones. We took a different approach. Donald Trump should be charged with crimes related to the assault on the U.S. Capitol, according to the congressional committee investigating the 6th of January 2021 attack. The committee claimed the former president instigated the attack by his supporters and provided aid and comfort to the rioters in violation of multiple federal laws. None of the events of January 6 would have happened without him. Congress does not have the ability to charge Mr. Trump with any of the listed federal crimes. That power lies solely in the hands of the U.S. Justice Department, which is part of President Joe Biden's administration. With its vote, the congressional committee members have, in effect, recommended the Justice Department act. They have laid out the case, the means, the motive, and the opportunity, as they see it. And, perhaps most importantly, they have provided a trove of the supporting evidence gathered over nearly 2 years of interviews, subpoenas, document reviews, and legal battles. After 16 months of investigation, the January 6 committee recommended 4 separate charges for former President Donald Trump and his associates. While these referrals do not carry legal weight, the Justice Department may consider the House panel's recommendations as part of their own inquiry into Mr. Trump's actions after the 2020 election. This statute makes it a crime to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede any official proceeding, or to attempt to do so. The committee recommended this charge because they believe Mr. Trump repeatedly attempted to stop or undermine Congress's certification of the election in the weeks leading up to January 6. They also say Mr. Trump deliberately attempted to stop the process by instigating a mob to storm the U.S. Capitol on the day of the ceremony itself. This crime entails 2 or more persons conspiring either to commit any offense against the United States, From the explosive opening of Can't Buy Me Love, to the closing chords of the end, Sir Paul McCartney played one of Glastonbury's greatest ever sets this summer. Over the course of 3 hours, he brought new life to the classics that established him as the planet's most successful and influential living songwriter. Along the way, he duetted with Bruce Springsteen and Dave Grohl, played something on George Harrison's own ukulele, and blew the fireworks budget for a thrilling Live and Let Die. It was equally moving when Sir Paul played I Got a Feeling as a duet with John Lennon, whose vocals had been isolated for Peter Jackson's Get Back documentary. On the 19th of July 2020, a few months into a global pandemic that had paralyzed the world, a rocket shot into the sky from the Japanese space launch site on its southerly island of Tanegashima. Aboard was a small spacecraft, a little over 2 meters, 6.5 feet, wide and weighing about as much as a Ford Focus car. On board it were a host of cameras and spectrometers vital for its impending mission, one which would take it more than 493 million kilometers, 306 million miles, from Earth. Perched on top of its gold body was a large black radio antenna, which would beam its data across the vast, cold abyss of space to controllers sitting at their monitors. Helen hasn't spoken with her son in more than a year. The last she heard, he was in prison. Now aged 31, he's been addicted to opioids for more than a decade. He's tried to call me, probably to ask for money, and I have not been picking up, explains Helen, who lives in England. Right now, that's the right decision for my safety and sanity. As the primary caregiver for her son's young daughter, Helen's focus is providing a loving and secure environment for her to grow up in. Helen remembers her son as an impulsive and destructive child, but with a wicked sense of humor and a kind heart. So, she was confused when, as a teenager, his behavior turned hostile and he started locking himself in the toilet for hours at a time, she recalls. When I confronted him, he'd tell me I was the mad one, the one on drugs. Sometimes, I wanted to laugh, it was so ridiculous.